You're listening to the Nutrition Experts Podcast, featuring guests who take the scientific talk about food and break it down for practical use. You've heard the phrase, "You are what you eat." Come find out what that really means. Experience conversations with experts in the field of nutrition and understand the power of food for our health, well-being, and beyond. Now, here's your host, registered dietitian and nutritionist, Mathea Ford.
Hi there, it's Mathea. Welcome back to the Nutrition Experts Podcast, the podcast featuring nutrition experts who are leading the way using food starts today, right now, with our next guest. It's great to have Janet Brancato on the show today. Janet, welcome to Nutrition Experts.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Again, my name is Janet Brancato. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian over 20 years. And I started out with community health talks, and I also do outpatient nutrition counseling. In the past 5 to 8 years, I've started my own virtual practice called Nutopia, which reaches more people online with a virtual practice. So I love to help out adults and children with healthy eating, especially weight management, but all kinds of medical nutrition therapy. So I'm so happy to be here and talk about all these fascinating topics with you.
Yeah, so this week we're doing a little bit different. We're going to kind of call it the news edition, and Janet's going to join on a regular basis. And we have some topics that we've done a little research on that we've seen in the news, and we just want to kind of go over it and talk through it as from a dietitian's perspective and a couple different perspectives. So this is just kind of going to be a mishmash of a few different topics. So we're going to get started. We thought, well, it's back to school time. It's September. And what's one thing you think about going to school, college freshmen, sophomores, is, that college freshman 15, whatever they call it. So what do you think, Janet, causes a lot of those gains?
I believe that there's change of environment, So when you go off to school, you have that newfound freedom. And now you're making decisions about food, and, your stress levels are changing. You're in a new environment with a lot of variety of food, whether it's in the cafeteria or the surrounding town that you're in, and you're out with new friends. So there's a lot of like social eating, I believe stress eating, late night eating. I feel like all of these factors can definitely contribute. Maybe there's less activity going on in their lifestyle, as previously they might have been involved in sports. And so now starting with school, you're in the library more, you're maybe sitting in classes more. So I think that all of these factors sort of are part of the, contributing to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think you also have sleep changes, like you talked about a little bit. You're getting up either earlier or you're staying up later and getting up later. And that kind of throws off your schedule. So in addition to that, you're all of a sudden responsible for your own food choices. Like maybe up until that point, your parents or parent made a lot of those decisions. They went to the store, they had the food in the house, and they hopefully made good decisions. So you always just had good choices. Whereas now you have maybe a roommate, and you guys have to, pick your food, and you may have a lot of unhealthy food around or just quick prepared food. So ramen, noodles, mac and cheese, that type of stuff. And you may not even be paying attention to how much, you're eating or what's changing. So I was trying to think of some ways that you can kind of prepare for that. What are your thoughts on some ways you maybe could be prepared for that change or help your kids prepare for that?
I have two college-age kids that have kind of gone through this process. And I believe it's just always good to start ahead of time, even just, obviously, as a parent, we're going to provide the right foods. You're going to be looking for healthy foods at home, but also have the conversation with them, about, making choices and like we said, these environmental factors that are changing. Maybe having that conversation ahead of time before they are going away to school, help them to come up with a list for healthy snacks or some kind of plan for activity. A lot of these campuses now have really elaborate gyms, and classes. Some of them even have dietitians. So you might could even tap into that a little bit. But I think, it always starts with a conversation and, maybe finding out about the cafeteria, what kind of foods are served, just getting them a little bit prepared ahead of time. I mean, obviously things, change once they get into school and roommates and things like that. But I think if they have a little knowledge ahead of time and you have that conversation, that will definitely help.
Yeah, I think you can help them make good grocery lists, talk about good foods to eat. Even when you're there, obviously, a lot of times parents go and buy food to put in the room at first, and just kind of encouraging that. Of course, you don't have control always over on the roommate, what the roommate might bring in. But yeah, I think a lot of campuses, there's a lot of walking, and it's just a matter of making a point to do that.
You could send them some healthy care packages with some little healthy snacks.
Yeah, I was thinking about care packages. Yeah, because a lot of times they have junk food in them. So
yeah, why not send it for the roommate too? Because they never tried some of these healthy items, and you might spur something in them to want to eat healthier.
Yeah, and a lot of times they're eating in the cafeteria, and hopefully they've got a good foundation of good foods to eat. I remember when I went to college, that was when I first realized there was other side dishes besides corn and potatoes. Because when I grew up, all we had was corn and potatoes. So I was like, what is that? And then I'm trying all these new foods. So yeah, have that generally encouraging environment. And also just even talking to them, like your kids, like, what are you eating? What have you been eating? What do you have in the house to eat? Because if they're like, oh, I just got ramen and whatever, you can help with that at that point. Of course, it's not the worst thing in the world ever to gain 3 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever. A lot of times they'll come home and get back into their regular environment and probably lose it.
Right. Exactly. You always want to have positive messages.
Yeah. Healthy snack ideas. So we wanted to move on from that and talk a little bit about kids and snacking. And a lot of times you have certain restrictions for allergies or whatever. What ideas do you have for like snacks that might be maybe nut-free if kids need to have, like a lot of classrooms, they're not allowed to have nuts?
Yeah, I know that can be definitely challenging and stressful for parents. But, there's definitely more variety out there now. And I try to have parents sort of go back to basics, think of the healthy food groups when you're thinking about snacks for your kids. Obviously fruits and veggies are always good. And you get that color in, at each meal. You can maybe side that with a little kind of healthy, fun dip, maybe like a little yogurt dip, or now they have the little pre-portioned hummus or the guacamole that kids really love, or find a favorite salad dressing that they might like to do some dipping with. So those are always good to do. And then you can do things like, like a popcorn is always good, and kids tend to like something crunchy like that, or a whole grain tortilla with some salsa, maybe some kind of homemade smoothie if you're at home and you want to do something like that. You could do like whole grain crackers. You could even try like a sun butter, which is made more from sunflower seeds. That shouldn't be a problem. And you could put it on a celery stick or on a whole grain cracker or something like that. So you could definitely be more creative with some of the snacks. Try to keep them wholesome and healthy. Cheese sticks, cottage cheese. There's all kinds of ways to get a healthy snack in. And you want it to, when you think about snacks, snacking is meant to kind of bring you from one meal to the next. It's meant to curb your appetite, keep your energy up, keep your blood sugars level. So we want to try to get some kind of a protein and maybe a fiber source in there. So that would be sort of a good combination.
Yeah, I love your ideas because we have so many prepackaged snacks that a lot of times you forget, oh yeah, I can cut an apple or I can put an orange in there, and we have the little snack size bags. And a lot of times what I'll do is if my daughter wants to put some chips in her lunch, for example, I'll grab the smaller size bag. So the portion she puts in there is not the full quart size, but it's more just the half, snack size, or put some, nuts in there or whatever. Obviously we're talking about nut free, but those types of things, just even thinking about, it's the whole idea of a smaller plate and a snack. You're right. It should be just to get you from one meal to the next. If you're feeling a little bit hungry, you don't want to get to where you're super hungry and or you're going to go eat everything in the kitchen, but healthy from that snack point. So again, they could even have a little piece of chocolate, but it's a portion control more thing.
Yeah, I try to have kids look at the food label and see what the serving size is. It might say 2 cookies or 5 crackers, get them in the habit of reading the label and checking the serving size, because that's a good guide to know how much to have. Because when something comes in a bag or a box, sometimes, we just keep putting our hand in and we don't realize how much, we're having. But if you follow that serving size and it says, 10 chips, all right, take out 10 chips, put it on a little napkin, or like you said, a little snack bag. And now you have your snack size portion. It teaches them as well. As they get older, they get an idea of, okay, if I follow the serving size, that's the right portion. So that can be helpful too.
Yeah, getting kids involved in the kitchen type thing where they're making their lunch for school or whatever, making those choices, you can let them read the labels, because that is a skill that will help them as an adult. And you mentioned you have something called a rule of 5s. How do you do that with the label?
Yeah, so I find that everyone can remember the number 5, right? So if you're looking at a label, or if you're you have your child with you and you're grocery shopping and you're looking at snacks, if you remember the number 5, so that means looking for at least 5 grams of fiber or more, 5 grams of protein or more, and then 5 or less grams of sugar. So that kind of is a good sort of balance of nutrients that kind of keeps them nice and full with the protein and the fiber, and we're not overdoing the sugar. And like I said, it's an easy number to remember. You can just kind of look down that facts panel and look to see that there's at least 5 or more or 5 or less, and it can help with picking out healthy snacks. So it's kind of a little numbers game too. When you have kids, they like to look for numbers and things like that. So it's kind of helpful.
I think it's also very educational to have them compare 2 things that they like. Maybe it's a jar of peanut butter and they're looking at 2 different brands, and to see the difference in the food label and just understand, which of those has a better profile to be a healthier food. Because sometimes you have peanut butters maybe with extra added sugar or other things. What kind of things do you have them do, or would you think parents could have them do to help prep and do the setup in the kitchen for meals?
Yeah, so, depending upon the age, but really you can start young. You can even start them out by looking through some cookbooks, or even online. There's so many recipe sites or Pinterest. So you could kind of get them even just getting creative with looking for, maybe a recipe or something that, visual that kind of, they want to make something new. So you can get them involved in just picking out a recipe, and then maybe going making a shopping list, going to the grocery store. The whole process is important because then they'll be more involved in the kitchen, depending upon the age. If they're real young, maybe have them wash something in the sink, or ripping up the lettuce. If they're real young. As they get older, you could have them season things a little bit more. They could add some spice and flavor things, and then obviously as they get even a little bit older, more high school age, they could do a little bit more maybe cutting or, prepping and little light cooking, that type of thing. So, and I really feel, because I've seen it with my own kids, the more involved that they are, the more apt they are to taste it, and the more apt they are to accept it, something new, and the more apt they are to like it. They're looking to be a little more independent, and it's sort of a way of giving them a little bit of that freedom to be independent. And then, like I said, they'll be more apt to want to try something new. So you get them involved in the whole process, from picking it out to prepping to making. And then, like I said, and again, every kid matures differently, but for the most part, it definitely will be a more successful way of getting them involved.
Something that we do that's kind of fun is if we go out to dinner and the kids have a meal that they really like or something that they really want or enjoyed, then we'll come home and try to make that meal the next week or so. So we kind of keep track of what was in it and kind of try to reproduce it, but it gives them the opportunity to think about what spices were in there. How did they do the food? And that way, my kids are a little older, they're 12 and 14. So choosing the recipes I've found to be a huge factor in helping them to want to eat that meal. So they know, okay, I made this meal. I picked this meal, so to speak, then I chose, and this is food I like. So they're more willing to help. They're more willing to eat it. And that's always helpful as a parent.
It really is. I see parents that get so stressed and they feel like it's all on them. They have to, they're the chef. They have to pick everything out. They have to decide. And, you really can get kids involved, and they want to be involved. They do. And it really is a great life skill. It's a great life skill to learn how to take care of yourself. And by cooking for yourself, that's such a great long-term skill. So all three of my kids, they cook. I mean, they're older, and they enjoy being in the kitchen. They're comfortable in the kitchen. And that's because at a young age, I tried to really get them in helping in some way. So it really does help. And what you just mentioned is a great idea, especially when you're out to eat. That's the best time to try something new. I always encourage my kid, why don't you try something new, something that you've never had before? It's always a good way to maybe experiment a little bit with something new, even if it's just one little side dish that's new. But it just gets you mature their taste buds and expose them to new flavors. So that's always going to be positive.
We were looking a little bit about back to school and thinking about how do you make your school lunch healthier? And some of the suggestions were to kind of look at the my plate type look, how do you balance those items within the meal? So when you talk to parents or talk to anybody about how to make a healthier lunch with your kid or for your kid, which personally for me, my daughter, she'll say she loves it because her dad will make her lunch and he'll draw all over her little bag and make her cute little signs. And I'm like, if you want your lunch, you can make it. So she always appreciates it when her dad makes her lunch, but she makes her own lunch. But we always have a discussion about what's going in it. But any ideas how to help kids to pack healthier lunches?
Yeah, like I said, getting them involved is always good. And the My Plate is a great visual to start with because it does give you the right balance that you need. So it just kind of depends if they're going to have a hot lunch or a cold lunch. You might want to start having a conversation with them about that. And then depending upon what they choose, you want to try to get some kind of a protein in there. It doesn't necessarily have to always be a sandwich. There's all different kinds of breads. You could do like a wrap. There's all different kinds of now whole grain wraps you could do, or some whole grain crackers. You could do the bento box idea, which is sort of like a box that has the different sections. Some kids like that, where you could put protein in one section, maybe some grilled chicken, or it could be like a tuna salad type thing. Maybe another section of the box could have some vegetables and fruit or some cheese. So that's another kind of concept. If you want to move away from the sandwich idea, is maybe do something like a bento box, or kids could bring leftovers from the night before. So it's really kind of brainstorming with your kids to kind of like maybe follow the My Plate and say, okay, what are some of the proteins that you might want to vary? Because variety is going to be key here. They might get bored having a turkey sandwich every day, but you could get a variety, so kind of like brainstorm with them some ideas. Like we said, you could get the little portion cups of dips, kids like that. And like you said, be creative, maybe have them pick out like a special lunchbox, or put a little note in their lunchbox, like have a great day, maybe a small sweet treat that they would look forward to having. So get them involved, just like you would with a shopping list. Maybe just write down some ideas with them. And then you could have them put it together, or you could do it together at the beginning of the school year just to kind of get the momentum going, and then maybe eventually they'll be doing it on their own, But like I said, it's getting them involved in the process, so that's going to be key.
I always try to make sure they have a drink in there, because like water, or they can buy milk at the cafeteria, because you want them to be hydrated. But one of the things I do with my daughter, she does not like school lunch, so she likes to make her lunch. My son will eat anything they have at school lunch. So I'll say to her when I'm getting ready to make the grocery list, I'm like, what do you want for your meals this week? And that makes her sit there and think, okay, So I need bread, I need this, I need that. And then she has all the components and she can assemble her lunch very easily. So as long as, you have the stuff in the house, then usually it's not a hard thing. We tend to not put sweets in there because a lot of her teachers use sweets as treats like Starbursts or mini candy bars or whatever. And so I try to encourage them to just put a fruit in there or make it colorful. Do you want a little, with your meal, are you having a little bit of vegetable, a little bit of broccoli, carrots, whatever, and fruit and meat, whatever. I love the bento box idea. The other reason I love bento box, not just because it separates all the food, but because sandwiches can get soggy. So if they take the peanut butter and the jelly separate, or even the meat and the lettuce and the cheese, whatever, and then they assemble it there at school, it's not a soggy sandwich. So it's really good in that way if you can separate, or if you have a tortilla or whatever in there. But it keeps it so it still tastes pretty good when you're eating it.
Yes, those are a great idea, and most kids love them.
On a completely different topic, since we've been talking about healthy snacks and eating lunch and gaining weight, a ketogenic diet is huge in the news. I mean, it's everywhere. I know a lot of people are like, ketogenic diet, all those diets are terrible. And I wanted to take a minute and just think about, in the shoes of the consumer, kind of what are some pros and some cons related to the ketogenic diet. So a ketogenic diet is typically, Atkins low carb diets can be a lot of protein and a lot of fat and a little bit of carb. Keto is specifically, 70 or 75% fat and 20 to 25% protein, and then 5% carb. And I think that's really just because there's residual carbohydrate in almost everything, so they have no choice. So it's a very high fat diet, and it does affect a lot of things. So for me, I was trying to go over what are some pros, and some of the pros I thought of were you would eat more veggies because they definitely eat a lot of vegetables on there, and less added sugar. Those are both really good things for your diet. Possibly more fiber with more veggies. And it would help. It does seem to help stop or slow down cravings, just because with more fiber, with more volume, you're getting, fuller, and also the protein and the fat tend to make you feel full. Did you have any thoughts on the pros for keto diet?
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely, it does help to clean up your diet because you're removing maybe some of the processed foods, the sugary foods, can stop those cravings for sweet. You're feeling nice and full and satisfied. So I see where that is definitely, a pro and a bonus to this type of style of eating. With all that fat, you're definitely going to be nice and full for a long time. It takes a long time to digest the fats, so you're going to feel nice and full. So it will definitely clean up your diet. From what I was reading, people do feel like they have more energy. They feel like the fog kind of clears up in their mind. They kind of feel like they're a little more, can concentrate a little bit more. So, so there's definitely been pros, people losing weight. And like I said, I think the main thing is that they're tuned into what they're eating. They're a little more conscious of what they're eating, and they're kind of cleaned up their diet.
Yeah, those cravings. To help in those cravings, because I know that sugar craving can be really strong. So thinking through what are some of the cons of the ketogenic diet, what are some things that make it not the healthiest way to eat, I really feel like eliminating entire food groups is not necessarily healthy. So typically keto, you're going to eliminate fruit altogether because fruit is got a lot of fructose carbohydrate in it. And yet it also has fiber and lots of vitamins, so it's not necessarily healthy to just eliminate entire food groups. The long-term compliance, I don't know what the typical cycle people have is, but it seems to me like it would be difficult to do long-term. Although once you maybe get a set of meals that you're used to eating, and you're consistent, you might be okay, you know, except for maybe some quote unquote cheat days. So did you have any thoughts on cons?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, eliminating food groups definitely kind of throws off the balance of things. And by eliminating food groups, you're eliminating nutrients. Like you might not get all those B vitamins that you get from the grains and, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, that balance of eating, there could be like, again, that boredom of eating the same type of foods, you know, and, you know, not getting that variety that you're used to. So it's always that long term. Whenever you're deciding about, you know, making a change with your eating, what is it? How's it going to look long term? You know, is this something that you can do long term? And then what about the social eating? What about when you're out with friends or family? You know, how is that affected? You know, so it can definitely, that could be a little hindrance as well. You know, so those are definitely some cons, you know, that I see as well, just with that unbalanced eating and just limited and restricted.
Yeah. Also for diabetics, you can't just jump off the wagon or, you know, jump on the wagon, whatever you want to call it, because you may be taking insulin, you may be taking metformin or other medications that are going to lower your blood sugar. And then all of a sudden you're not taking in any carb. You need to talk to your doctor for sure before you do that. And I don't see a lot of people encouraging that for diabetics or people who even just different medications. You do need to talk to your physician, because that sudden switch, while it's probably good in the long run, if you're a diabetic, you cut down on your carbohydrate and you have some weight loss. Those are beneficial things, but definitely you don't want it. A low blood sugar is a much more medically harmful situation. Yeah, risky situation than high blood sugar. Although, you know, there's high blood sugar can be bad, but a blood sugar of 200 is not as bad as a blood sugar of 50. You know, so you just have to manage that. And I think it's important to understand that success is going to be a little different for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, talking to your doctor first will definitely be
And your
important.
doctor may not be on board with it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a discussion with them and say, I'm going to do this. Can you help me understand what I need to change or what's going to do this? Or, you know, maybe at that point, the doctor realizes, okay, you're serious about, you know, getting your diet in a better health. Let me give you a referral to a dietitian. Then that might be a good thing. But having that conversation, I was doing another podcast this morning and we were talking about medical marijuana, and which we're not planning on talking about today, but just the idea of talking to your doctor about it. And there's going to be some pushback. Some doctors are not going to want to, they're going to feel like it's inappropriate to talk about or to encourage. And some doctors may be a little more open-minded and say, okay, you want to do keto? This is whatever you're going to change. These are the things you need to do. So I think that open conversation and not just changing is important.
Definitely. Yeah, no, that's key with anything. I totally agree.
So another another life change is intermittent fasting. I've seen this on the Today Show. I've seen it on a lot of different things. Intermittent fasting, it can be a couple different things, but it can be like a 10-hour and 8-hour window that you eat every day. So maybe you eat from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and you don't eat outside of those hours. You obviously drink water or black coffee. My understanding as well is okay. And there's some results that people have seen, and there's been research that shows that doing that daily intermittent fasting, and then there's also like every other day type of fasting, where one day you would fast the whole day and the next day you would eat either healthy or whatever you wanted. But it's said to affect your hormones like insulin, your adrenal hormones like cortisol, thyroid, because once you start eating something, I imagine that your body starts to worry about digestion and not about repairing and all those other things, although it does that too. But it stops its focus on those things and starts to focus on the gut. If you give it more time to work on relaxing or repairing or whatever, then you see those results.
it's definitely an interesting type of lifestyle, and I didn't realize until I started reading that there were so many different types of fasting. Like you said, there's the alternate one, and then there's ones where you're fasting for 14 hours or 16 hours, so there's all different ones. There's one where you're fasting 36 hours and then you have a cheat meal. So there's really quite a few going on, and again, I know that they stressed in the article that you have to find, if you're going to try something like this, it really has to sort of be easy to do. Like, it has to kind of be easy for your lifestyle. They also, a lot of them said to start out gradually with the fast. Maybe don't go the full amount of time, but maybe start out with the fast for as long as you can, and then maybe just eat something light. So there's sort of little variations of it. I know they also stress that, on the day that you are eating, or the time period that you're eating, that you really try to eat healthy, because obviously that's the part where you're nourishing your body. And like you said, you're repairing, and so you don't want to go from not eating, having that fast, to eating a lot of almost like a binge eating or a junk food eating. You really do want to make it a quality eating. People are finding good results. I mean, again, it's another lifestyle change. I questioned, like you said, the long-term, how long can you do something like this? But on the short term, from things that we're reading, people are having positive results. You have to take all these things in consideration. If somebody does have an eating disorder or have a problem with food, this can make it worse. So you do have to be careful. Obviously, if someone's pregnant or breastfeeding, this would not be, any kind of a lifestyle that you want to try out. But definitely, it's something that has become popular. We'll have to wait and see.
You've just listened to an episode of the Nutrition Experts Podcast. Be sure to get more information about this week's episode at www.nutritionexpertspodcast.com. Tune in next time for another great conversation with a nutrition expert and expand your personal knowledge in the field of nutrition, one conversation at a time.